You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we're getting ready for the big one, or the second big one, or one of the big ones anyway. It's India v England. In India, we're doing our series preview today for your ears. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe-Brown. How you doing, Max?
Good, thank you. I think the big one, the cricket pod, I reckon, like it's our big one. Like the Ashes is England's big one. India v England, probably the cricket pod's big one. So
yes,
I'm excited.
This is our Ashes.
Yeah.
Even if for the one of the teams participating, it actually isn't their Ashes. We're also joined by Dan Weston. Dan, how are you doing? It's been a little while, and you've had some life experiences since the last time you were on the podcast. Is all well?
Yeah, you could say that. I think that last time it was before I had surgery, so now I'm just over 3 weeks after open heart surgery, and they ended up having to go back to hospital on Wednesday because they decided to find 4.5 litres of fluid between my lungs and my heart, which was basically causing my heart to go mad. And it could be basically just like I couldn't even stand up because I was about to collapse every time. So that was fun. Had a drain stuck in, which was actually one of the worst experiences of my life. And now I'm here and I feel fine.
Well, it's good to have you back, and I'm glad that only 3 weeks on from heart surgery, you're able to come on the podcast and get back into the swing of things.
100%.
Right, Max. Messages for the listeners. They need to know that they need to vote for the Cricket Podcast. So I don't know why I'm telling you this. I should be telling the listeners. You need to go over to the Sports Podcast Awards website, find the Cricket Podcast section, and vote for the Cricket Podcast as the best cricket podcast in the world. Then we win an award, which is, big. That is big. It's big news for us. We'll put the link to that in the show notes, so you can do that relatively easily. Someone said to me, Max, that you have to do it on a desktop or change your phone to desktop setting in order to
that was when it first came out. Yeah, the website was so badly optimized and the user experience was so awful that you couldn't actually scroll down far enough on your phone to get to the submit button. Well, so if that happens to you, just click desktop mode on your phone and it'll be fine. It might have fixed it now. Let's hope so.
Yeah. You've made that sound like a lot of hard work. I was just trying to get a friendly tip. Now people are not going to do it.
I just want them to be aware of what, I don't want them to get halfway through and be alarmed, right? Just be prepared on your way in that it may be a little bit more effort than it sounds, but it's effort that's worth it. And
Cool. Do that. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow wherever you're listening or watching as well. Max, we're going to get straight into the team news. That's going to be part one. In part two, we're going to be doing one of our trademark prediction snake drafts, talking about best batter, best wicket keeper, I was going to say, but what I meant was most wickets, player of the series, score predictions, and we'll throw a flop in as well, I think, just for a laugh.
Yeah.
And then in part three, yeah, well, it is always good, yeah. And in part three, we'll be talking questions. We've got a few questions in, and maybe if we've got time, we'll talk about some of the other cricket going on in the world. It's a packed show. Max, let's start with team news. Do you want to do England or India first?
Let's do England first. Why not?
Cool. Well, there's a few things we need to get through with England. First of all, I can run through the squad. I think that's pretty easy to do. Ben Stokes as captain, Ollie Pope as vice, Rayan Ahmed, James Anderson, Gus Atkinson, Johnny Bairstow, Shoaib Bashir, Zach Crawley, Ben Duckett, Ben Folkes, Tom Hartley, Dan Lawrence, Jack Leach, Ollie Robinson, Joe Root, and Mark Wood. So that you know who the players are now, Max. So that's good. First things first, I think we should probably address the news from today. There is one big omission there, or one big name missing from the initial squad, and that's Harry Brook, who has returned to England, left the touring party for personal reasons. Dan Lawrence is the man that comes in. Max, how rocked were you by that news on a scale of 1 to 10, on the Richter scale from 1 to 10?
The Richter scale's logarithmic, isn't it? So I have to try and think about it. So probably like a 6. I don't know. Okay. It's a big blow for England, I think, because of the way that they play. I think it does make it. It's great news for Ben Folkes. That's who's really potentially benefiting from this. it does sort of make England's selection decisions probably a bit easier, because they would have, that's the decision that we'd have been talking about probably, were Harry Brook in the squad. Do they stick with Bairstow with the gloves? Do they go with the better wicketkeeper, or do they, focus on what Harry Brook and Johnny Bairstow might do with the bat? So those debates we won't be having. I mean, it's a real shame for Harry Brook, especially, the start to his Test career. Obviously, we wish him well as well. We don't really know much about it. We just know that it's personal reasons and that his family have asked for people to remain respectful and keep things private. So we'll do that, and just, no speculation needed. Just all the best to Harry Brook, and hopefully he can come back and play some part towards the end of the series. But yeah, no, it came out of the blue, obviously, so quite surprising. But I think a logical replacement as well in Dan Lawrence, and it'll be interesting to see how England approach naming an 11 for the first Test.
Dan, Max framed it slightly there as a little bit of a blessing in disguise, and that it solves one of the headaches they had with the middle order and which wicketkeeper plays. Do you share that view, or do you think this is a massive loss for England going into this series?
A bit of both, I think, would probably be fair. I think it's a massive loss in terms of Brook and his talent, and obviously, as Max said, no speculation on what's going on. All our thoughts are with him and his family, and whatever he's going through. I'm sure the cricket world is going to support him through that. Apart from a few idiots on Twitter who seem to be pretty stupid about it. So yeah. All the best to Harry Brook for sure. Now, with regards to the selection debate, I think it makes England's life easier, but weakens their team, if that makes sense. Because, look, to be honest with you, I would have had folks over Bairstow, but I'm not sure that that's an easy decision to, one, have to make, or two, have to communicate. So I kind of think it's allowed them to make an easier decision. And actually bringing in Lawrence, which I've got views on too, gives them a potential to structure up a little bit differently with two offies, or two among the batters in the top six as well. So perhaps gives less need to play a specialist offie like Bashir. The question is that, I mean, and this is all about the process, really, is that you just picked a guy who's playing ILT20 the day before, and then you got a guy like Keaton Jennings who's scored like 200 runs in the match at the A team, and don't worry about that.
Well, Josh Bohannon scored a ton as well, didn't he? Captain the Lions side.
Yeah. The reason why I bring Jennings into the equation is because people often sort of tout him for these away series in the subcontinent, good player of spin, etc. And actually, I don't really see that there's a major issue in terms of restructuring. So Jennings could probably bat at, say, 3, 4. You could also move Duckett down there and have Jennings opening as well. But I think that would work fine as well. So, there were other options. But I think it's very England, isn't it, that they just go kind of straight for the guy who's played T20 as opposed to someone that.
Yeah, but he is the next man on the list, though, isn't he, Dan Lawrence, around the Test squad, right? I mean, he's been in the side. He offers a bit of off spin, so I think when I said it makes sense, I sort of thinking of the pecking order, really, the depth chart.
Yeah, but the depth chart for home is different to depth.
That's true. Yeah.
And I don't know. For me, I just don't like the process. I think I feel pretty hard done by first Keaton Jennings right now.
Yeah, I think or Bohannon, who actually probably would slot into that middle order relatively well. That brings us on to some of the other preparatory questions or question marks that surround England going into this tour. They've decided to stop off for a 2-week holiday in Dubai on the way to India, and that's caused certain people, and it's often the same people in these certain situations, to kick off a bit and say that they would be better served actually going to India and playing in the conditions and in the country that they're set to tour. I'll pose this one to you, Dan. Do you think their preparation is lacking in terms of where they've chosen to base themselves before heading out to India next week?
A little bit. I personally think that they should spend more time in India, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be any value in playing like a warm-up game against some random team in conditions you may or may not get in the first test. Now, that's not necessarily what I mean, but I do think it's important to acclimatise to the climate a little bit more. We saw how the weather took them by surprise in the World Cup. Perhaps lessons learned there. I mean, yeah, look, I think a lot of the players like to go to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and it's quite a player-friendly destination generally. Perhaps they wanted to kind of break up the tour in terms of having different bases. Is it a good
golf?
place? Well, there's some wag on Twitter did point out that there's a golf club around the corner from Zayed Stadium. So, yeah, no comment further. Look, I don't think it's great preparation. Do I think that it's going to have any effect on the result? No, I don't either. Because onto that.
Yeah.
Because they're going to win 5-0, obviously. Like England don't need to practice for these conditions. It's Dad actually messaged me and said, I'm going to predict the McGrath 5-0 England.
No, I didn't. I meant the reverse.
Max, final one I think on England. Again, I think this is more about people who aren't there than who are there. When we ran through the names earlier, there are probably a couple of people on that list that some of our listeners will not have heard of. Liam Dawson, Will Jacks are two players that most of our listeners will have heard of. Yep. They're not on the tour. Why aren't they on the tour?
Well, they're not on the tour because they don't have high enough release points, Jack. That's why they're not on the tour. Yeah, Shoaib Bashir and Tom Hartley are the two that basically replacing them. And yeah, it sort of came out just before Christmas, didn't it? And we spoke about it a bit then. And it seemed that the reasoning was, we know the reasoning was because they told us the reasoning was that they have high release points and basically they're trying to copy Akshar Patel, as far as we can tell. The other thing they said is they're probably not actually going to play, there for the experience. So it's one of those things that like really, when you sort of think a little, you scratch the surface, you're like, okay, well, I quite like that they're thinking about what makes someone effective in certain conditions, trying to see what the options are in England and giving them an opportunity. And then you sort of try and think about it a bit, more, a bit deeper, I suppose, and what they're trying to achieve. And you notice that they're not in the Lions squad, either of these players. So, in terms of like integrating them and trying to get players ready to play Test cricket against an Indian side, they weren't given that opportunity in the Lions side. And then, they're taking them to India, but they're basically saying they're not going to play. So why are they even bothering looking at this high release point thing? So I just find the whole thing a bit confusing. Like they're putting out this strategy that they're going for, and then actually that everything else around the strategy is completely against and misaligned with what they're professing is the intention. So I found it all very confusing. I think Will Jacks will be perfectly happy to carry on playing in the SA20 and smacking hundreds for fun. And Liam Dawson will be spitting tax, I expect. He had the county championship season that if you could ask for one ahead of England touring India, that's the one you would have asked for. He batted brilliantly. He took bags of wickets, bowled really nicely. And not there even as a backup for Jack Leach. So yeah, he'll be upset. I will expect. I reckon Will Jacks will probably be fine. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The two guys they've taken. It sounds, the more and more you hear about it, like it was an elaborate ruse to trick two people into becoming net bowlers for 2 months.
Basically.
Dan, if you there's a couple of other issues here, and I think you've spoken about them as well. And what might just put it bluntly, neither Jacks or Dawson have a central contract. However, both are in-demand players on the T20 franchise circuit. Do you think that's potentially actually what's going on here?
I think that you'd be a fool to think that there's not some truth in that. And you could throw in, obviously, not that he's necessarily around the Test squad, but Phil Salt, for example, as well, another player who's very, very hard done by not to get a central contract. And this is what I find with England sometimes, is just purely my opinion, is that they'll make a mistake and then they'll double down on that mistake because they don't want to admit that they're wrong. And I mean, these central contracts, we've spoken about this before. I've written about it already. I mean, this is a mess, basically. There are going to be players, highly likely there are going to be players who have got a central contract and will not play a single game. It's incredible, isn't it, really? And yet, someone whose career is on the up, like a Will Jacks, and who played way more matches than a lot of the players who got central contracts, has somehow slipped the net. I don't understand it. I don't understand about David Willey either. I don't understand about Liam Dawson. Now, Liam Dawson, maybe he won't get a central contract because he hasn't really played for a long time in England setup, and that's fine. You don't have to have a central contract to get a call-up. People might say, okay, yeah, but then he's getting paid X amount to put and play for Sunrisers Eastern Cape. That's fine. England have got loads of money. Just give them that money. Give him that money to come and play for England or more. It doesn't matter. I mean, talk about making obstacles for yourself. It just doesn't make any sense as well. And it's interesting, obviously, about the two young spinners who have been brought along. So Tom Hartley, Shah Bashir. I mean, I think that first of all, there's some kind of flawed logic if you're going to suggest that because Akshar Patel did really well against England last time, that players who are like Akshar Patel are going to do really well in India, because Akshar Patel had the luxury of bowling against England's batters. Let's not forget that. So that's where maybe like you look at the data and it could be a bit flawed, a bit skewed. And also, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to roll forward several months to the start of the county championship, and both Hartley and Bashir could well not be in their county's first 11 for the first game of the season. You got Lancashire have got Nathan Lyon coming over, and Bashir's at Somerset who have obviously got Jack Leach as well. And the chance of them playing two spinners in April is not going to happen. Simple as that. So actually, where's the game time coming? I think sometimes you've got to look at these decisions in terms of pathways a little bit. Whereas you know that Dawson's going to play game in, game out, no matter what for Hampshire, because he's got enough other skills to compensate for that. And on a side note as well, I mean, Bashir is an offie. Now, look, I think he's got talent. Don't get me wrong. But the amount of off spinners who don't bat in the top 7 and have a successful career, you can write on the back of a postage stamp. Because they match up against only 25% of batters roughly, 75% of batters roughly are right-handed, 25 left-handed. You've got to be like Ashwin, Lyon, Harmer quality to have a really good career. And the amount of off-spinners that you see on the release list from counties every summer is huge. And these are guys who these counties have probably invested 5 years plus in terms of age group cricket, academy, rookie contracts, etc. Doesn't take a lot to work out. Actually, they've probably blown 6 figures of development costs on a guy that's probably mathematically got a very, very low chance of making it. Now, I hope Bashir does, obviously, but in 5 years' time, in my view, he's either going to be world class or not really play much.
So there we go. That's England, I think, wrapped up. We're doing a slightly long part 1 here, but can we get through India quite quickly here, Max?
We probably can because I mean the story of India is just pure domination, isn't it? So there's not as much funny funny business going on with India. Run through their squad quickly. Rohit Sharma captain, obviously Shubman Gill, which has to be Jaiswal, Virat Kohli, Shreyas Iyer, KL Rahul, KS Bharat, Dhruv Jurel. That was the interesting call up, I think. Ravi Ashwin, Ravi Jadeja, Akshar Patel, Kuldeep Yadav, Mohammad Siraj, Mukesh Kumar, Jasprit Bumrah, vice captain, and Avesh Khan. So, I mean, I think 2 questions for them lineup wise, maybe. The wicketkeeper, King Legend or KS Bharat will be one, and then probably I think the likelihood is that it'll be Jaiswal opening and Gill at 3, but not guaranteed because they could play KL Rahul and KS Bharat. So there's probably some decisions to be made there. I think ultimately it's just the only difference for India in this series compared to previous England series. Obviously, Shami's out, which is a blow, but he might come back later on in the series.
Probably don't need him.
Probably don't need him. And no Pujara and no Rahane, so that middle order has a bit of a new flavour to it. But I don't think that's going to make a difference, is it? Where do you see India going on the selection front? Is it King Legend over KS Bharat?
Oh, what as wicketkeeper? I think they'll go with a specialist keeper. I think they'll pick KS Bharat. Is what I would predict. India aren't like England though when it comes to selection, and what I mean by that is their process for actually getting to an 11 can be quite nebulous. It's basically here, Max. I'm talking around the fact that I don't know what they're thinking. There's a phrase, isn't there, for Russian watching, Kremlinology, and I think that applies to the BCCI. What's the headquarters building of the BCCI? If we can work out what that is and put ology on the end, I think we've got a kind of sporting sub-genre of journalist that exists out there trying to figure it out. So I don't know. They'll pick one of them. As we're also kind of talking around, I don't think it will make any difference.
No, they could literally pick any combination of the batters in the squad, any combination of the bowlers in the squad, and they'll still win, and they'll win comfortably. It's all
That's
irrelevant.
one thing I would say. That's the one thing I would say. When the squad came out and I was looking at it, I was like, what is the worst 11 they could actually pick? And I went through it, and I put all the seamers in, and I had like 6 or 7 bowlers or something like that. And I looked at it and I thought, that'd still win. That's still going to win 5-0.
Today's at 4, Ashwin at 5.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
It literally
Doesn't
was.
matter.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting. Dan, I'd be curious about your view though. Like India, obviously moving on. Do you think they're moving on in the right direction? And I think maybe I saw you talking about this as well. There's I've forgotten the bloke's name. But there's a wicketkeeper who averages 8. No, another wicketkeeper who averages 85 in the Ranji over the last 2 years. Who they've blanked in this scenario. I wonder whether you think he should be in.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest selection travesties of all time at the moment. It's certainly like, I mean, what does he need to do? Does he have to average 100? I mean,
no, he needs to play in the IPL,
which of course has an extremely strong correlation between international Test cricket.
Yep.
Look, I don't know. I've got no idea what they're thinking. I think with India, I mean, they're not the only team that you can say this about. They do tend to throw in at least one selection, and you're like, are you sure about that? But as I think you said earlier, Jack, I don't think it's going to make one bit of difference.
No Shabazz Nadeem in this squad list, so they're safe from that one this year.
Yeah. Or was it? Didn't Jayant Yadav play it before as well?
In 2016, he did. Yeah, he bowled quite a lot actually. Yeah, I mean it's just a question. It's a story of domination, isn't it? In India at home, so England have got their work cut out. I was doing a bit of a dig into some of the stats behind India's recent form at home. Obviously, it's 11 years since they lost a series. They've won 34 of 42 tests in that period. So, yeah, back in those days, Virat was 24, Rohit was 25, Ashwin was 26. Spring Chickens losing a series. It's England. Like, England have so got their work cut out. It's not even funny. Like,
it's quite funny. What is quite funny is that there's been basically no hype for this series whatsoever from an England point of view. You would think that obviously the broadcasting situation in this country has played into this. Because no one wants to advertise it.
No one can advertise it.
Knows which TV channel it's going to be on. Yeah, but I think there is a slight wake-like atmosphere in this country, a pre-wake atmosphere. It's like the England team are going to be attending their own funeral.
They haven't even turned up yet.
Well, yeah, like
it starts on Friday.
I think nobody's that excited by it because they know England are going to get absolutely pumped. Is my take. Should we wrap up part one? And
I'm excited about it.
Okay, well, let's look. We're in part two. We're going to do some predictions. We're going to try and build some hype because there's plenty to play for. Even if we think the score might be a little bit one-sided, there's plenty to play for. There'll be loads to talk about. And if you're listening and you're liking what you're listening to, make sure you follow along on whatever platform you're listening on, because we'll be doing pretty regular shows through the course of the test series. We'll try and do, might not be daily, but where we can, we'll try and fit in shows to keep you.
Well, I mean, we could do
reaction
daily,
with our reaction.
It might only be two. So.
2 shows per test. The day one show and then the test match summary show on day 2. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. We're going to take a break and we will be back to make predictions.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast for part 2 of our India v England series preview. In this part, we'll be talking predictions and we will be doing a snake draft. We'll get to that in a second. Before we do, though, I just want to remind you to vote Cricket Podcast or vote for the Cricket Podcast in the Cricket Podcast Sports Podcast Award, which is a mouthful. It's a lot. There's too many podcasts in that sentence. Head over to the website, which is Sport Podcast Awards, also in the show notes. Find the Cricket Podcast section and vote for us. That's what we're asking you to do. Cheers. Right, predictions, fellas. We're going to do most runs, most wickets, player of the series, flop of the series, and a score prediction each. Maybe we'll do 2 score predictions because there's only 3 of us. Ross partying too hard for his birthday, if you're wondering. If you're wondering where he is, he was supposed to be on the show. And we got a message about 5 o'clock saying he'd overdone it and wouldn't be able to make it. So
or something like that.
No, I think it might be. I think the 2-day hangover might be starting tomorrow. It's. I think the party's in full swing right now, and unfortunately we weren't invited. Thanks, Ross, if you're listening. Let's do top run scorer. The way this will work, snake draft. You never heard of what that is before. Max is going to go first, then Dan's going to go, and then I will go. But that means I get first pick for top wicket taker. No doubling down. Max, you've got to write down all the predictions so that we can revisit them at the end of the series. And that's it. Max, who's going to be the top run scorer in the upcoming series and why?
Right, well, should we take the low-hanging fruit? I'm going to go for Virat Kohli because he's at home in India and he's really good at cricket and he's going to score all the runs because he's back now. He dominated the World Cup. He's got that sorted. He's over his little bump where he didn't get 100 and he's going to wipe the floor with England by scoring, maybe averaging 35, which will be twice as much as anyone else.
How many runs do you reckon he'll score? Just ballpark. 5 tests.
So we got five tests. I reckon India will only need to bat 7 times. So 289.
That's so few. Dan. Who's going to be top run scorer and why?
Well, obviously, I would have taken Virat at a much higher run line. I think I would hasten to add. I agree with Max about the sort of 7 innings. I thought 5 would be a bit harsh, but I can see like 400. Now, who else do I go for instead? This is a good question. I'm going to go for. Oh, it's a tough toss-up between King Legend. I'm going to go for King Legend.
King Legend.
Oh, I think that's a curveball. If that one pays off, kudos. I think that would be really impressive. I kind of hope it doesn't. Like we'll get to score predictions later. I'll say for now, I think England are going to lose. If King Legend is the architect with the bat of that defeat, I'm not sure I'll be able to take it. Like I can take Virat runs. I can take Virat runs, but I don't know if King Legend runs will be something that I'll be able to survive. To be perfectly honest, I will take. I think another piece of low hanging fruit here, though. There's a few good options on the India side. Could have gone with Shubman Gill, for example. I will go with the captain Rohit Sharma, though. I think at home we know what he's going to do. Like, but you can't really stop it. It's like Arjen Robben. He's going to go. He's going to smack the ball around.
Yeah.
He's going to smack the ball around from ball one. Be a handful of low scores in there, but there'll probably be a century at some point too. And maybe if we get a flatter pitch towards the end of the series, he'll be able to cash in against the tired England team as well. So that's that. I get to go first for wickets, don't I? And this is, I think there are basically 3 names in the hat. Actually, you know what? There's definitely a 4th name that I'd throw in there. I'll be curious to see whether any of us pick it. I am going to go with Jadeja as the top wicket taker. Few options, could be any of them, but I think Jadeja pretty much guaranteed to play every test, get a lot of overs. So that's where my money is. Dan, I think I know who you're going to pick, but do you want to tell us who and why?
Well, it's going to be a spinner who isn't Jadeja, obviously, because you've just had him. Look, I don't think Bumrah's going to bowl enough to be a candidate here. I don't know if he'll play every game, but I'll go with it. I'm going to take Ashwin because his record against right-handers and left-handers is both exceptional. And I think that we're going to get 5 ranked turners, and that might inspire Max to go with the remaining low-hanging fruits.
I was going to say that seemed far too difficult for you, Dan, picking Ashwin there. Like that took you way too long. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Akshar Patel's left. I mean, maybe Jack Leach. Maybe you never know. He might. Maybe Ashwin, because this is the thing. Ashwin and Jadeja could accidentally share the wickets really evenly, and Jack Leach could take all of England's wickets. So there's that. But
that is true, Max.
The thing is, England are only going to get to take 70 wickets at most, and
Leach will get 35 of them.
200, yeah. So I guess I'll go with Akshar Patel because he's done it before. Why not?
I did think Leach was in the hat.
Yeah,
for it, like,
but
mainly because he's the only England spinner I expect to take lots of wickets. And
I think Ray will do okay.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, if that happens, maybe England will have a chance at a test or 2. I think they'll need 2 people to take wickets at different points. So there we go. That's wickets and runs done. Nobody's voted for an England player yet.
No, we haven't done the flop yet. Don't worry.
Time for player of the series, Max. Who are you going to go with?
Oh, I'm back first again. Well, I mean, the thing with player of the series, like man of the matches, it just almost always goes to the batters. But with with an India home series, I feel like it could be I'm going to go Ravi Jadeja because he's got the option of both wickets and runs. So you're hedging your bets, aren't you?
Yeah, I think,
and I do like Ravi Jadeja. He's one of my favourite cricketers.
I think that's obvious, really. That choice. Dan, you're called.
Well, I'm quite grateful to Max for leaving me with this option. As I think most people appreciate, whoever wins the series is going to get the man of the series in there from their squad. and I think
And
the
that's why I'm going for Ben Stokes.
Virat Kohli.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see King Kohli. I think they're both good choices. I'm going to take Ashwin.
Yep.
I think similar to you, Max. He's got the chance to score some runs as well. He pummeled England in one innings, didn't he?
He did,
in the last tour, with picking up a century. Was that Chennai? So he can do it on both sides of the ball, and it means I'm hedged across Jadeja and Ashford now, which I like.
Smart.
From a predictions perspective. Flop of the series. This might be a bit cruel, this one, but I think coming crashing back down to earth after a superb Ashes series, Zach Crawley, I think might struggle in the series. I think I'm going to make a little bit of a call here that I think England basballing might not be. We haven't really talked about this as a talking point, but I think England's tactics to basball and to try and score really quickly and to be there for a fun time, not a long time.
Yeah,
might actually be reasonably effective versus what they did last time out. But I don't see Crawley as being one of the players that will pull that off. I think Duckett might. I can see Root picking up a few runs. Obviously, very very good player of spin. I don't see it for Crawley though. I think he's one of the players that I think will be tested with his technique in India. Dan,
I'm not sure I'm with you there, but I've got a few other names that I'll throw into the hat.
Okay.
Quite unsurprisingly, all England players.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that given the fact that England have got sort of two injury-prone seamers, a guy with no Test caps and a 41-year-old. I mean, that's if that's not recipe for success, I don't know what is. So the sort of newly remodeled Jimmy Anderson and run-up. I'm 41 years old. I'm far from convinced that he's going to have a good series away from home. Then the other options are Johnny Bairstow. I just don't see in any real kind of semblance of decent form right now.
Are you just about to name the England 11?
Yeah. And then the last one, and this maybe be an unpopular choice, but I think I went with him in the IPL and I won that prediction, and that was Ben Stokes. I mean, we've got no idea what fitness level he's at. The chance of him bowling is minimal, and I think it's just too much to ask, Who do I pick? I'll stick my neck on the block. Ben Stokes.
All right.
I think that's an interesting pick. Before Max picks, I just mentioned baseball and how I think it might go quite well. I don't think we've had your take. And when I say quite well, I still think England will get battered, but I think that they might score more runs than they did last time. Dan, do you think that there's any? Does that position hold water from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it does. When you're the worst team of the two who are playing, you want to turn the match into as high variance proposition as it could possibly be. And I think that approach does ensure that the match becomes as high variance as possible, because all you need is two guys to have a day out and you're in decent shape in the match. Whether they've got that in their locker is another matter entirely. But I do agree that type of approach is more advantageous for England than, for example, just trying to sit in and wait for the inevitable, which has probably happened a few times in the past.
Max, your call on flop of the series.
Yeah, it's tough. So you've left me with 9 options, basically. While you were talking, I was thinking, can I make an argument for an Indian player? Jaiswal, if he plays, maybe he'll struggle opening the batting's possible. I was trying to think about whether Mark Wood just bowling short at Shreyas Iyer might make him immediately get out all the time, but I would imagine the pitches are going to be so slow for pacers that even Shreyas Iyer can play a pull shot. So I've discarded that. So back to the England side, and for me, I think it's going to be history repeating itself, and the the phantom of Ravi Ashwin is once again going to be all over poor old Ollie Pope, and he's going to crumble under the great man's wizardry, I suppose.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if Pope only plays 2 of the tests. Like
Hot, averaging 5 in the first 2.
Like it goes quite wrong, and then they give Dan Lawrence a go.
Yeah, that would be a flop.
Captain.
He is the vice captain.
Yeah, you can drop a vice captain, I think. I wouldn't be stunned if Stokes didn't play all the matches as well with fitness issues. I mean, the guy's just come back from a serious knee operation. As Dan was saying, nobody has any idea like how fit he is. Playing probably as a specialist batter. Maybe they think he'll bowl in the 4th or 5th test, but by then England probably have lost the series. So, well, yeah, like, I don't know. Max, now we get to the juicy bit. What's the score going to be?
Score. Yeah. Well, something tells me it's not going to be 5-0.
Okay.
But that means there has to be an England win or a draw. And I also can't see either of those things happening. So I guess all I'm left with is 5-0. So 5-0. And then Dan can't have it either.
The first prediction from the Cricket Podcast is 5-0 to India.
Yes, sorry, I should clarify. That was 5-0 to India, not to England.
Dan, 5-0's off the table, so you won't be able to. Yeah, you won't have your McGrath moment, but there's plenty of other options.
Well, as Jack said earlier in the pod, I've gone on record as saying that I'm in favour of the reverse McGrath 5-0 India prior to Max's prediction. I have to go for the next best or next worst, or however which way you want to look at it. 4-0. Bit of rain one day.
I think so. I actually genuinely think 4-0, if I could choose, would be the one I went for. So I think that India will go 3-0 up, and then the last 2 tests will be played on slightly flatter surfaces.
I guess like the last test is at Dharamshala, isn't it? And it could get cancelled after half an hour because the pitch just implodes on this. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and we know that runs can be scored at Ahmedabad. We just saw it in the Lions test or not test there, and the Australia test last year. Similarly, really high scoring. I will go 4-1. I think that's the only
viable option left.
Yeah, like can we have one more pick? But this time we have to be a bit more outlandish.
Yeah, all right. Do you want to
go 3-2 India? I think it's be a series for the ages.
Yeah,
Dan.
What an ambitious one!
Yeah, an ambitious one. Yeah.
3-0 to India because 2 games get rained off.
2 games get rained off. Max, there you go. Right. Now you might have to actually predict an England win here.
I'm gonna do it. England are going 3-1.
3-1.
3-1.
England win 3-1. That would be the greatest performance by a tournament.
India are going to be struck down by a really awful case of norovirus. That means they have to call up the entirety of their India A squad, who couldn't even beat the England Lions.
It's still not picked Sarfraz Khan, probably.
No.
Right, boys, we're going to take another quick break. Then we're going to come back. There's some funny quotes from Sunil Gavaskar that I'm going to read out. Then we're going to do some questions and maybe talk about Shamar Joseph and the SA20. So, see you in a sec.